Hello, everybody. I haven't met all of you this week, but my name is Kitty Boone, and it is a bittersweet close to what's been a wonderful 10 days here at the Aspen Ideas Festival. If you don't know, we started a week ago on Wednesday with Aspen Ideas Health. We started first session of Aspen Ideas Festival on Saturday, to a rousing discussion about Roe v. Wade. We've had more rousing discussions about Roe v. Wade, but we've had many, many important discussions about a lot of things. And I shared with our staff as we got going that, and people that were volunteers, and I'm going to close my comments today with this note. There's a wonderful book written by a woman named Catherine Hayhoe. She's now the chief scientist to the Nature Conservancy. She's an evangelical. She's a scientist at, I think, Texas A&M. And she wrote a book about climate change, but I think this applies, her thesis applies to everything we heard about this week, which is the way to really solve problems is to talk to one another. And I think that's very suited to who we are and what we're about and trying to build dialogue at the Institute. You've heard a lot of really interesting comments and discussions and presentations, and the best we can all do is share those comments and perspectives with our colleagues and our family and our friends and people we don't agree with to try to build a better society in a time that is so divided. So that's my closing thought for the week, but before we close the festival, I'm very delighted to introduce you to quite an interesting conversation today that's going to start off with three musicians, all of whom are from Afghanistan. And one should know that the National Afghanistan School of Music, I'm going to say this wrong, the Afghanistan National Institute of Music was targeted by the Taliban for annihilation. And 250 students, if I'm going to get this wrong, please correct me on the stage later, had to escape with the help of many and are relocated to Portugal. 3 of the students of the school who did not have to escape but who are studying in the United States are going to perform for you now, and we're going to follow with a conversation with Marin Alsop, Renée Fleming, and Jessica Lustig, who's the treasurer of the Friends of the Afghanistan School of Music, to talk about what that has meant and what is happening with that. Dr. Sarmast, who runs it, unfortunately couldn't make it at the end of the day all the way here from Portugal. But we have an incredible conversation. So first we're going to start with a musical performance, a folk song. The first is Beethoven Piano Trio No. 1 in E-flat major, followed by an Afghani folk song called Marge Man by the legendary singer-songwriter Ahmad Zahir. And our incredible musicians are pianist Elham Fanoos, violinist Mehran Fanoos, and cellist Nazira Wali. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Please have a wonderful time.
where do you want us to sit anyway?
Wherever you-
Okay, sorry. Here.
So I'm sure all of you were thinking, if only you had practiced a little bit longer when you were that age, you could be doing that as well. So incredible performance, and we have an incredible panel here. So we're going to talk about music today, but specifically about what happened in Afghanistan, because many people may not know the enormous effort that was undertaken to enable Afghanistan young musicians to escape with their lives when Afghanistan was controlled again by the Taliban. So to put this in context, all three of you have been interested in this. Let's put, Renée, you're one of the world's most famous opera singers. You have plenty of engagements. You're performing in Aspen. Why did you really care that much about the Afghanistan Institute of Music?
Well, I saw a film actually that was created called See Me, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was a global concert actually, and it took place in various cities around the world. I think Sao Paulo and Vienna and in Kabul. So it was this picture of young men and women playing music together in a conservatory setting. It was so moving to me. With I think it was a woman conductor as well, right?
There were several women, yeah.
Yes. So
Sorry, can somebody fix the sound?
when something happened, actually, is it me? Okay. When something happened, and I realized that things were going to change drastically and dramatically, I reached out to Marin and I said, please tell me these kids are in conservatories around the world. And she said, well, no, they're not, and we're working hard to try and get them out.
Okay, so well, you were conducting for a long time the Symphony in my hometown, Baltimore. So you're busy with other things, the Vienna Orchestra. Why are you interested in this area?
The microphone, sorry, those things are working. The film that Renée was mentioning, called See Me, was a project that we put together for the opening concert of the World Economic Forum. And the effort was really to try to use the power of music to express how united we are, as opposed to how divided we are as a human race. And so I called Yo-Yo Ma and I asked him, would he sort of be the focal point to start the film? And then it really, it morphs from Yo-Yo playing Bach on a beach to a new piece by a composer named Renée called See Me, sung by Sao Paulo Choir and the Drakensberg Boys Choir from South Africa. And then we go into the Pastoral Symphony by Beethoven, you know, thinking about the future and the issues of climate change. And, you know, I wanted to get that idea across of the importance of nature. And so the Afghani kids play some of that, and my orchestra in Vienna played, and an orchestra in Florence as well. And so this was part of a project. I'm the music director of the opening concerts at the WEF, and so this was part of a bigger project, and that's how I got to know the kids in Afghanistan.
And is it easy to get Yo-Yo Ma on the phone? I mean, just call him up and you say you call Yo-Yo. Can anybody get him on the phone, or you know him that well? I'm
really surprised that you don't have his home number, and I'm sure you do, David. So.
But he's never home. That's the problem.
I don't want to make you feel bad, but we're on speed dial with Yo-Yo. So
yes,
really?
that's
Wow.
right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, okay. Now I feel depressed. Okay. So to put this in context, can you describe what happened after the Taliban were routed out of control of Afghanistan, and the Afghanistan government that the United States supported came in? Music was allowed to come back into Afghanistan. Is that right?
Yes, I just want to say for a moment I'm substituting. I look nothing like Dr. Ahmad Sarmast, who's very sorry not to be here today, but I work together with another colleague, Leslie Rosenthal, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the Juilliard School, and myself, Jessica Lustig, to be the sort of not-for-profit Friends of Anim for the school, the Afghanistan National Institute of Music. And just to put it in context for you, Dr. Sarmast founded this school, the only music school in Afghanistan, in 2010, after the withdrawal of the pushback of the Taliban, but the music scene in Kabul, which and in Afghanistan had a very long and rich history. He was the son of a famous Afghan musician and was determined to find a way to bring the musical heritage of Afghanistan back. So that is why he founded the school in 2010, and he wanted to have kids from all over Afghanistan, boys and girls together, which was a very radical thing at the time in 2010, following the Taliban being pushed away, to study together.
The victim of a bombing. Can we get these mics up so we can have a conversation, please?
That'd be really great.
Yeah.
Mics aren't working.
While we're talking about it, I mean, he had
Other handhelds.
Yeah.
He had a lot of difficulty actually starting the school, and he was the victim of 3 different suicide bomb attempts, one of which almost took his life. This is because of running the school. This is because of trying to teach people music and save the very rich musical heritage of
And
Afghanistan.
they announced that it was a corruption of youth. That
So-
was why.
Yeah.
Put it
I
in
think it's working
context.
now.
Oh, is it working now?
Afghanistan has a 1,000-year music tradition. When the Taliban took over, they got rid of all the musicians. When the Taliban lost control, you could argue, the Americans and the Afghanistan non-Taliban took over, the institute was created.
Right, the Americans and the World Bank and many of the other European countries funded it.
And so they created the institute, and then when the Taliban took control again, all of a sudden they said, music is no longer permitted.
Haram, what they call haram,
Okay.
which is against Islam.
All right, so the people who, all right, it's one thing to say no music except religious music, but no music at all. It's another thing to say we're going to capture, kill, or do something else to the people who are musicians. So why, is that what they also said? Why did you need to get the musicians out of Afghanistan? Suppose they just said, look, we're not going to be musicians anymore. Can we just stay here? That
Wasn't actually good enough because first of all, when the Taliban came in on August 15th to Kabul, the second place they went was the Afghanistan National Institute of Music, because the school was such a powerful symbol for everything that the Taliban was not and did not want. So right now, the campus of the Afghanistan National Institute of Music is the Haqqani Taliban Command Center. That is what is there.
All right, so the musicians who were, when the Taliban came to get the musicians or close down the institute, where were the musicians? Were they in hiding? Where were they?
The musicians, I mean, there were actually kids in the school at the moment that they got the warning from the guards that the Taliban had gone through the gates of Kabul. So those kids literally dropped their instruments and left. But the reason it wasn't good enough to just say I'm not going to play anymore is that the Taliban declared the teachers guilty of apostasy, which was the conversion of Muslims to Judaism or Christianity through their teachings at the school, which was entirely untrue. This was a completely secular school that taught music. But because of this, apostasy is punishable by beheading. So the staff, the faculty, of the 273 people who were saved, it was also faculty and staff as well as students, because they were in mortal danger. If it was found on their phone or somehow in their papers that they were associated with the school, they could and would be killed.
But how did the music community in the United States say, okay, we now have heard about this, we're going to get these students out of Afghanistan? Why did the American music community do it, and how did you get them out of Afghanistan?
Well, I want to say this was a major worldwide effort. You were both
Renee.
involved.
Well,
Okay.
Marin was the one who introduced
Okay.
me to the World Economic Forum as well. So Nico Daswani, who was working there. So we kind of built like a kind of a
Network.
group, a network of artists. Yo-Yo was one of them. Certainly Jessica and Marin and myself, and I'm sure others. And we just thought, and trust me, we don't do this. This is not what we
Not what you do for a
No,
living?
if I did, I would have known who to call immediately. But we're just calling everyone
Yeah,
we
we just
know.
called everybody. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
idea. I think I was able to be helpful because I know a composer, Malik Jandali, who I work with often, who's the Syrian composer, and he happens to know the royal family in Qatar, and they happen to have access to planes. So that was a helpful connection.
That was
You know,
actually a
things
very
All right,
important connection.
what about the United States government? We're supposed to be nice people. Why didn't we just say, we're sending a plane over, a couple 747s, will pick up these nice young students, and they'll bring them to the United States. Why didn't that happen?
Really, why? Yeah,
I'm not sure how much I could or should say about that, but I would say that the school was on the priority list for the State Department. I spent weeks personally, my husband, everyone in our families, working on the lists. And when we finally got through to people at State who really saw those lists, there were thousands of people ahead of the kids at the school. And America, unfortunately, I'm very sorry to say, did not open its doors to this group. It was 273 people. We also tried Germany, the United Kingdom, many other countries, Australia. We went through a long list.
To be fair, I have a colleague who was in Karlsruhe at the conservatory. They were equipped to take all of them into Karlsruhe. But it's the laws. It's the laws having to do with, you explained this to me, I think you have to have a passport for that to happen.
But the students, where were they? Were they hiding in people's homes?
They were hiding in their own homes?
They're hiding in their homes, and so...
And starving.
Yes.
Well, how did you communicate with them and say, come to this checkpoint and get on a plane at a certain date or something? How did you do that?
It was incredibly difficult. It was very fraught. I mean, there was an attempt to get, there were 7 buses of students and faculty who were at the airport in Kabul. You've seen those pictures of the people hanging off the walls 2 days before the complete American withdrawal. And the group was in buses for 17 hours, but in the end, they did not get through the gates. So they were turned back and they all had to go home and were just there for weeks.
When they returned back and had to go home, did the Taliban come after them, or they had other priorities to go do
The
other
Taliban
things?
didn't come after them even when they were in the airport because they were so afraid of a second bomber. This was right after those Marines were killed.
Okay, so ultimately, a country let them in, and
Portugal.
that country is not the country you would have expected, not the United States, not England, it was
Portugal.
Portugal. Great country, but why was Portugal willing to let them in?
Honestly, we weren't in a position to second guess because that was the only offer we got for the entire group of 270
Really, that's it,
people.
the whole world?
But it was
But
really,
isn't-
I'm sorry,
sorry,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say
Yeah.
that it was really important, I think, that they not be separated,
Right.
that they not be split up, that they have some sense of community and go together. And Portugal was the only country that
would
would
save
take
the school.
accept the
Okay, so are
entirety.
they in Portugal now?
Yes.
And are they going to stay there, or are they going to eventually go somewhere else?
They are planning to stay there at least for 5 years because they'll be European citizens in 5 years.
And they also, a bank has been, it will be a conservatory. It's going to be rebuilt into a
Well,
conservatory.
Portugal has
That's the
certain
plan.
tax advantages. I guess they're not focused on their tax advantages in Portugal. That's probably
They're
not the-
focused on finding their Afghan instruments.
Okay,
Can
okay.
just a word about Dr. Sarmast, whose heroism all along, who worked, who didn't sleep evidently, who was bombed, who lost his hearing. There was shrapnel pulled out of his head in Australia. He went back and he fought again. Is he up for a Nobel Peace Prize?
He is.
Yes. So this man is, I'm really sorry he's not with us because it's extraordinary what he did.
So basically, the Americans and other people around the world came together to say, let's save these musicians because they could have been beheaded, and ultimately they've now been saved. What about, was everybody who was a member of the Institute, are they now out, or there's some didn't get out?
Everyone who was associated, and I have to say, Dr. Sarmast took absolutely everybody. Very recent graduates, people who were kicked out of the school for bad behavior, people who were bad students. He took everybody who was actually legitimately associated with the school. He did not discriminate. So
Okay.
they're all out.
They're all out.
Okay, and so the expectation is that these people will never go back to Afghanistan because as long as the Taliban
They
are
wish
controlled.
to. When the Taliban
when they
is
leave.
defeated, yes.
Okay, so how much did all this cost, and who put up the money for all this?
Good question. The international community really did pull together. In the end, it was a global effort. Dr. Sarmast and the school won the Polar Prize, which is kind of like a Nobel Prize for music. And the Swedes were extremely involved in the efforts to fundraise for the school. And in the end, there was a staging. The group came out in 5 separate airlifts.
Right, okay.
And they were staged in Doha, Qatar. And Qatar was extremely important in getting the students out, which is why your composer was so crucial. It was actually the royal family who helped.
Okay.
But in the end, those 5 different airlifts where everyone was amassed in Doha, and then the group was moved by SAS and Spotify. They are the ones who put up the money to actually save the music.
Okay.
There's one other thing I think that's interesting, which is that because they have a 1,000-year musical history, which is mostly oral, for that to all be lost and destroyed, including all of the instruments, he's really trying to create a sort of a notated, a Western notated version of all of that music so it isn't forgotten and so we can hear it too.
And he also really wanted to save the masters so that the traditions could be taught.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a couple related questions. Opera singers, sopranos, sometimes are thought to be divas. You've heard this before, right?
No, no.
Never?
What does that mean?
That means they're temperamental, they're focused only on themselves, and so forth. So, you know, you're a very famous soprano performer. How come you have time for this? I mean, aren't you just focused on your voice, and how did you have time for this?
Well, I mean, I have to let down my guard sometimes, you know, and just so I'm more accessible to the audience.
Okay, so let me
I'm
ask
sorry.
you.
I love the diva. I absolutely love the diva sort of idea, and I wish I was a diva all along because people would have talked about me more at dinner parties.
Well, why are opera singers divas anyway? Why are there so many of them like that? They're just
This is a very fragile
fragile.
instrument, and it's unique. You know, when I stop singing, no one will ever hear my voice live again. But it's also the pressure, I think, and the glamour of it. You know, opera's quite glamorous.
Now, are you performing out here?
Yes, so Sunday at 4 o'clock is The Brightness of Light, which is a setting by Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Kevin Puts of the letters between Georgia O'Keeffe and her husband Alfred Stieglitz. And it's very moving and beautiful. And he's able to paint heat and the landscape, the space. It's gorgeous. I highly recommend it. And then Wednesday, I have one more performance next week. It's a music theater gala in Harris Hall at 6:30. So the concert Sunday is 6:30, and I'm singing with Rod Gilfrey, all these great duets and songs.
Now, opera singers perform without amplification, right?
Yes, on
so,
stage.
like, why do you need that? You could be singing what you're saying here, right?
So we probably will have a tiny bit of enhancement. So in an opera house, there's no amplification.
Okay.
That's true.
So let's talk about conducting. Have you ever dropped the baton? What happens when you do that? Like, does it just fly out of your hands? Is it?
Can't say that I have. I've stabbed myself once, and it was sticking out of my hand, and it was just in a rehearsal, and I said, oh, I hate when I do that. So it was a little bit of a bloody event, and I had to get a tetanus shot from that. Who knew?
So if you're like Yo-Yo Ma, you get an extra seat on the airplane for your cello. When you were
Yeah, the baton doesn't need an extra seat.
you
I
carry
can do it in the pet carrier.
You just carry it? Okay. So why did you want to be a conductor? And are there an enormous number of women conductors?
Well, it's a little bit of a long story, but I
think you were the
wanted to
first.
be a conductor when I saw Leonard Bernstein conduct, and mostly because of his joy at what he was doing and his enthusiasm, and he seemed to break all the rules in classical music, and I really liked that, even at the age of 9. And so that was my goal, and you know, there have been women before me in this field, that most definitely.
Well, you were
but
the
few
first
and
for
far
a major
between.
symphony in the U.S., first woman.
Yeah, I mean, I hold that sort of dubious title of being the first woman to lead a major American orchestra, South American orchestra. Thank you.
So you're leading an orchestra and you're rehearsing, and somebody is not performing well, do you say, call them out, or you'd call them back later behind the stage and say you're not doing a good job? How do you let them know that they're not doing a good job?
Well,
Yell at
you know,
them?
you have a lot of you have a lot of body gestures. I have a lot of looks. You know, I can. But I don't know. You know, you have to remember that as a conductor, not much happens without your musicians. I mean, I can stand there and wave my arms a lot, and kind of a little breeze gets going, but there's no music.
But when you're conducting and somebody,
I need them.
and do your mind ever wander? You're thinking about something. You're conducting Mozart, and you're thinking about Beethoven, and you lose the train of thought. That ever happen? That never happens.
Occasionally, I'll think about what I want to eat when the rehearsal's over, but no, You know, it's all about focus, I
Okay.
think.
And right now, I'm just curious, in the conducting world, are there more women now coming into the conducting world?
Oh, absolutely, because of
Yeah.
Me Too, really. That opened the door to a lot more women. And you know what's surprising to me is how everyone says, wow, where did all these talented women come from? And I think, boy, I wish you'd asked that question 20 years ago, you know, because there's so many women that didn't have this opportunity. And just one small plug, I started a fellowship 20 years ago for women conductors, and our current fellow from Poland is here with me, Anna Mehran. So say hi.
So, Renée, when you're performing in an opera, has it ever happened where the person you were, let's say, singing against, they forgot the part or the words, and what do you do when that happens? Or do you ever forget the words?
I think it happens a lot.
A lot.
So I am great at making up words in foreign languages.
Especially foreign languages.
And yeah, and that's the crucial part in
Really?
foreign languages, and having them mean approximately what I was supposed to say.
That's great.
But it's usually just 2 words or something.
But you speak German, right?
Yeah, I speak fluent German and enough French, and used to
But
speak
when you're
Italian.
singing an Italian opera,
Yeah.
you don't know the words. So how do you sing on a language you don't know the language?
Well, I mean, I know enough about Italian to do it, but it's how do you sing in Russian or Portuguese?
Czech.
Portuguese was the hardest, or Czech, and I learned by rote. But young people are learning the languages. They're reading the Cyrillic alphabet. They're going
it's
all out
fantastic.
with it.
So for people who are here, if they get a sore throat or they get laryngitis and they don't know what to do with it, what does an opera singer do when you get laryngitis?
Oh, I travel with a whole. I mean, you
bag
would
of
not
medicine,
believe
huh?
the amount of medications I travel with, just in case I get a cold.
But the best thing is chicken soup, or is it tea with honey? What is the single best
You
thing?
know, it's sad that you say that, because I wish that we could take a magic pill, but my ENT over the years is just, he says the same thing. Steam.
Rest.
Steam, yes. So
Don't
get
sing.
moisture, exactly. So unfortunately, I don't get sick very often.
Okay.
Ooh,
You know, David, could I
Yes.
jump in and just say one thing, just bringing the conversation back, that I found it so poignant and fascinating in a way that one of the very first edicts that the Taliban put out was to deny people the right to sing. And, you know,
It was in March 2020.
in March of 2020.
wow.
And to me, it just articulates the incredible power of music, that we all share this power of music. I'm sure you all sing, you all hum, you all whistle. You know, we're born hot-wired for music, and it's something that connects us all and unites us. And so it just to say that through Renée, I mean, we enjoy the music at the highest level, but we can all participate in this creative experience.
And I see some of the young artists actually
Yeah,
from the Aspen
Raphael
Music
is there.
Festival. Yeah, exactly. Some young singers. We have an incredibly talented group, and it's a privilege to work with them.
So in Afghanistan now, what needs to be done next? Are you raising money? Or are you doing other things? What do you need to do now?
We're raising money. We are looking for a site for the school. Some of the kids left only with the clothes on their back. They were told to take 7 kilos with them, mostly food and water. So we're trying to extract the instruments. We mostly just need funds because they need help with their future education. They actually need to urgently learn intensive Portuguese to be able
Well,
to.
when people are raising money, I always hate to ask them how much they're raising, because they will basically think I'm going to give it to them. But so how much are you raising?
5 to 8 million.
How much?
5 to 8 million.
5 to 8 million. Okay, and you're trying to raise that over what period of time?
The next
As soon as you can get it.
24 months, I would say.
Okay, and right now the students are all living in, is it Lisbon?
They're living in
Okay,
Lisbon.
and they're performing there, and they have places to live. And what about their families, their parents or their siblings? What happened to them?
Some of them came. We had 2 new babies born in Doha. And some of them have very large families that are in Afghanistan that Qatar is actually working on trying to bring to Portugal.
Now, do you have musical talents as well? Are you a singer, or you're a
I studied
conductor?
oboe here at the Aspen Music Festival in the 80s.
Yay.
3 summers. It's a very magical place for me.
So, have you ever been to Afghanistan, or
No,
have
no.
you ever been to Afghanistan? No.
I haven't. Really, the closest I came was working on that film with them, which was really joy. Maybe we can put a link to it. It's on YouTube. It's called See Me, a Global Concert. It's about 20 minutes, and
It's really beautiful.
Just
Really
as a sort of background to See Me, the year before COVID, in 2017, the Zohra Orchestra, which is an all-women's orchestra, was formed at the Afghanistan National Institute of Music. If you want to talk about a threat to the Taliban, there was nothing like women conductors with an all-women's orchestra playing the Afghan national anthem in front of the very same Central Asian leaders who are denying these girls the right to an education.
Well, the Afghanistan president escaped with some helicopters full of $100 bills. Is any of that available to be used for this purpose?
If only.
What?
If
Yeah,
only.
if only.
It would.
Right, okay.
I have to say, too, for me, the thing that really galvanized me is that I have two daughters about the same age as these young people were in your film, playing music together with boys. This is all they'd ever known. So the thought that suddenly overnight your life would change to that degree and you would be denied so many rights and freedoms, of course, the last week.
yeah.
And I was really quite stunned. I just thought we have got to help these kids.
And it's crazy to think that Afghanistan is a silent nation now. People have gotten killed, shot in their car for listening to music. Or the Taliban found music on this 19-year-old boy's phone and beat him and then killed him for having music on his phone. There aren't even intros and outros in the news programs now. I mean, literally, if you go there, there is no music at all. That is, according to Dr. Sarmast and the rest of us, I think, not part of humanity. That is not culturally appropriate. Every culture has music.
So let me ask you both a question about your craft. Opera is very well loved by opera fans, but there aren't as many opera fans as maybe there are rock fans, right? So how do you get people interested in opera these days? Are you seeing younger people interested in opera or not as much as you would like?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I had a performance earlier this year. I mostly concertize, but almost every 3 days. It's a lot all over the world. And it was a house full of families. You could tell it was like parents and children. And I thought, how are they affording this? You know, they looked sort of normal. And so I asked them, and they said, we made all our tickets $20.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And people actually come. So I think there's a cost associated. Opera is by far the most, well, other than probably Marvel films, expensive performing art because it, you know, puts together so many different arts.
Did you ever perform with Pavarotti?
I did one time on television. Yes, I think it's probably on
I'll have to
YouTube.
look it up,
I
yeah.
was a
Does he have a
baby.
nice voice? Had a nice voice, you'd say?
I miss that voice so much.
And he couldn't read music, right?
Not really. He worked with me on an opera once, and his version of the score was a very large card with all the words on it.
Okay.
So,
And in the conducting world, classical music, is classical music something that younger people are interested in as much, or you think that the audiences tend to be with people with my color hair?
No, I hope it's more intergenerational. I hope if you're free this afternoon at 5:30, you can come over to the concert. And you know, I tried to put a program together that really has something for everybody. It's pretty eclectic, ending with a real barn burner by James P. Johnson, who's a Black American composer who was denied the right to have his music performed by symphony orchestras. And I took 6 years to find it, and it's just fantastic stuff, really great. And I think, you know, through programs like this that give young people an opportunity to learn instruments, you see when you give kids this chance, they absolutely love it because it's an incredible outlet. It requires enormous skills, enormous dedication, but it's also a great outlet. And I see, you know, in Baltimore, I started the Orchids program with 30 first graders, and there are now over 2,000 kids playing musical instruments. And they come to the concerts, and they're a better audience than any adults. They love it. And, you know, as long as we keep the price point at a place where everybody can access it, I was hoping, I'm almost done. I was hoping during COVID that we would finally have that conversation. How can we make art free and open to everybody? And I understand that with our government structure, we can't yet, but that's something I would hope for.
Somebody's growing up and watching this on streaming or here and says, I want to be a conductor. What's the best way to train to be a conductor?
Do it.
Just conduct. Just get up there and
Start conducting. So there's no
Even if
there's
there's no
formula.
orchestra,
No
just
formula.
the
and-
mirror.
And
Suppose-
start putting groups together.
And if you want to be an opera singer, that's easy to do, right? Is it just, what do you do?
Yeah, no, you know, I always say, it's not like you wake up at 16 and somebody says, you've got a great opera voice, and you're on stage at the Met the next day.
Right.
So it's a huge amount of training, just the voice, it's a very virtuosic instrument, but also how to be on stage, all the foreign languages, the styles of the different, you know, centuries of music. So it just takes time, dedication, passion, and talent.
Okay? And what percentage of people actually say they want to be opera singers actually make it to the Met? Like 1/10 of 1% or less than that?
Less than
Very few.
Very few. Okay. So what are you going to be focused on the next month with respect to this project, Afghanistan?
Housing, extremely important to try to, I mean, the group is still in the same housing as when they arrived in December. And then their schooling, their official conservatory schooling. They actually fortuitously are very close to the National Conservatory of Lisbon.
So
So
how
they-
many,
Can I ask a question? Are they upset about what's happening in Afghanistan with their
Very
families?
upset,
In
constantly
terms
worried.
of the hunger, the illness, and all of these
They're
types of
all in
things?
touch on WhatsApp. They hear
Okay.
from their families.
how many people in the audience played a musical instrument when they were in school? Anybody?
Yeah,
How many-
all right.
At what age did you realize you weren't going to make a career of it? All right. How many people have children that play musical instruments or otherwise involved in music? Anybody with grandchildren doing this?
No, not that many.
Okay.
Not that many.
Well, we're going to hear right now another performance that I think you're going to find quite interesting. You want to introduce the group that's going to perform it?
Yes, this is an Afghan folk song being performed by these three musicians who were introduced earlier. I want to just say that they were all in the school when Dr. Sarmast suffered from the suicide bomb in 2014. So even though they're not there, I mean, their colleagues are all the ones who are currently in Portugal.
Okay, well, thank you for what you've done, and thank you for your performing out here, and your performing out here, and thank you very much.
And that concludes the 2022 Aspen Ideas Festival. Please visit aspenideas.org to see sessions and the Aspen Institute YouTube channel. Thank you all for attending.